main organizations actually globally, but certainly in North America, that is changing the way that brands are thinking about their materials, their labels, what kind of packaging they're putting together, and are making promises and commitments to change toward a more sustainable world, is the U.S. Plastics Pact. This is an organization to pay close attention to, and we are very, very fortunate today to have the CEO of the U.S. Plastics Pact here with us today to tell us what the movers and shakers are doing and how the U.S. Plastics Pact is changing what brands are doing, which ultimately changes what we in the label industry are doing. So I would like you to welcome Emily Tipaldo.
All right, am I on? Can you all hear me? All right. I know, it was really hard to hear in the last session, so I want to make sure people can hear. Who has heard something about the U.S. Plastics Pact? Show of hands. All right, we got a few. That's great. We are a large collaborative organization that is committed to working on the issue of plastics waste and building a circular economy for plastic packaging. And we know that any one company or organization can't do it alone. Roz alluded to this. We are part of a broader global network that was born out of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation's New Plastic Economy work. So globally, there are 12 plastics pacts. There are a few additional pacts underway, one in India, one coming together in Mexico, and some other circular economy packaging work happening through the Ellen MacArthur Foundation in China. You all probably can't see this right now. I know Roz is going to share slides and the presentations for the TLMI members. But again, our vision is around creating a circular economy for plastic packaging, and that's really the thing to remember. And we're driven by core values. When you get together a really broad stakeholder group, I'll come back to that in a second. When you get to bringing together a really big stakeholder group, so we have over 115 businesses and organizations who are part of the U.S. Plastics Pact. It means kind of figuring out how we bring everyone forward to meet some really aggressive sustainability and circular economy goals without pushing them off the ledge. And that is sort of our sweet spot of how, again, we're laying this foundation, we're building a strategy for the circular economy, helping to move everyone forward without pushing them off the ledge. Go back for a second here. I mentioned 4 really aggressive targets that we're working toward, and these are aligned for the 12 plastics pacts across the globe. We're all working on a 2025 timeline, which you all know is right around the corner. The first target, target 1, is largely about reduction. So if we are working toward the creation of a circular economy for packaging materials, for plastics, there will be things that are not on a circular trajectory. There will be things that are never reusable, recyclable, or truly compostable, and so we need to eliminate those from our supply chains. The second target, which you see in the bottom left, is largely focused on upstream design and innovation. So it's asking the consumer products companies and their converters and suppliers, what is within our control in terms of changing our packaging so that it is more either reusable, so designed for a reusable system, it is truly recyclable in whatever geography you're working in, or it is truly compostable. So when I say truly recyclable or truly compostable, meaning it is both technically designed to be recycled or to be composted, and it is widely accepted for that end state, so for recycling or for composting, also in that geography. So it's happening in practice and at scale, and is designed correctly for that. And that's definitely true when it comes to labels and all of the associated materials with labeling plastic packaging, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. The third target is largely a systems target. So it is, how do we work together as the US Plastics Pact to help drastically boost the recycling rate, working toward a goal of a 50% recycling rate and drastically increasing the composting rate. The fourth target that you see in the bottom right is about drastically increasing the amount of post-consumer recycled content that's used within plastic packaging. So that could be within labels, that could be within the packaging form itself, but really boosting that to a 30% average by weight, and also incorporating the use of bio-based materials. I mentioned that we are 117 or so organizations and businesses strong. This also includes members of the public sector. So we have city representatives who are participating alongside environmental NGOs, consumer brands, material suppliers, label converters, packaging converters, retailers, and CPGs of varying sizes. So it's a pretty diverse group, and we're constantly sort of pushing ourselves from different angles, again, to meet those 4 aggressive goals. One thing that I am often asked as the Plastics Pact is, how are you different? There are so many sustainability projects, initiatives, the Sustainable Packaging Coalition, the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, sort of all of the things that are out there, the Recycling Partnership, Closed Loop Partners, lots of individual material-specific or substrate-specific projects, C-Lab, other things, C-Flex. How is this different? There are a few ways in which the Plastics Pacts are different, and they're incredibly important. So one are those 4 targets that I mentioned. Everyone has signed on to the pact saying, yes, we will help the pact meet those 4 aggressive goals on a very short timeline. The second is building a national strategy. If companies are going to meet the commitments that they've made for themselves, so think for a second, how many publicly traded companies have made 2025, 2030 commitments and have to deliver on those? Who is helping them with that strategy outside of their own R&D, their own leadership? In the US today, we do not have national or federal leadership on this. We have lots of states doing different things, which you've probably seen over the last 18 months in particular, but there's nothing cohesive. The US Pact is it. So we are the place in which we are developing the strategy to help build this circular economy for plastics packaging, and doing it in a way across the value chain. The third element here is also really important. How many folks remember companies who 15 years ago made post-consumer recycled content commitments, and then do you know if they met them? Do you know if they designed their packaging to be more recyclable? Did they meet any of those commitments? We don't really know. So one of the key tenets of the Plastics Pacts globally, including in the US, is transparency and accountability through annual reporting. The US Pact put out a baseline report that's reflective of 2020 data. It's available on our website. I'll get into some more details on that in just a moment, but we require that every organization, whether you are a city, an academic institution, a material supplier, CPG, in some capacity, you are reporting your individual progress toward those 4 goals. And then the data is aggregated so we have a sense of how we are moving together in that direction toward building the circular economy and meeting those 4 targets. And the holistic approach that is here on the far right end is really just how we approach everything that we do, knowing that we can't have any one part of the value chain dictating, what should be. but we need the awareness and input from all of the different elements throughout the value chain to make the change that we're looking to make. There are activators, which we call our members, because I, as PAC staff, am not going to get all of these companies and organizations to the goals that they have committed to. Each individual company and organization has a responsibility to take action toward those goals and contribute to the greater whole. So we see them as activators, and this is as of the beginning of August. We've since added a few more, which are reflected on our website. We have lots of expectations for those who've joined, again, because this isn't just a nice marketing thing to slap on your website. Like, we are really looking toward the leadership of all of these organizations to help carry the water in terms of how we're executing our strategy toward building a circular economy and redesigning things upstream to be more, to look at a reuse system or be recyclable or compostable, as well as working sort of at the other end of things in terms of shoring up infrastructure for collection, sortation, and reprocessing. So we ask our activators or our members to engage in a number of different ways. The work really gets done in a small group setting. So with 117 organizations, you can imagine what it's like to have all of the cooks in the kitchen. So we've divvied up work amongst these different work streams. They are able to work together and bring ideas to the broader group. So you can get a sense, a little bit of a sense of what we're working on. I'm also happy to answer any questions about our small group work at the end. So I mentioned how annual reporting and transparency and accountability is key to what we're trying to do. We need to not only hold each other accountable, but are looking to demonstrate that externally to all of those who are watching what the companies are doing who've signed on to the US Plastics Pact or the effort globally. The World Wildlife Fund is one of our partners in terms of leading and managing the US Plastics Pact, and they are the primary group that's helping us do our data collection, aggregate that data, do the analysis, and provide it back to the Plastics Pact. Some of you may be familiar on the plastic side of things. World Wildlife Fund US has a tool that they have developed called Resource Plastic, and there are about 8 consumer goods companies, food service companies who are using that tool globally to track their plastic footprint, like Starbucks, McDonald's, there are a handful of others, Keurig, Dr. Pepper, to name a few. But we've modified that global tool that they have to do our annual reporting for the US Plastics Pact. So getting into some of the data that we have put out there, in 2021, we released our roadmap to 2025, which is that strategy I was talking about at the beginning. So laying out, if we want these things to be true, where we have eliminated packaging elements that are problematic or unnecessary, we are designing all of what we can for reusability, recyclability, or compostability. We are working toward ramping up the national recycling and composting rates, and we're working toward using an average of 30% of post-consumer recycled content. How do we get there? And that's what our roadmap lays out for us. It was built from the ground up by all of our PACT activators or members. It's on our website. If you haven't seen it yet, I encourage you to take a look. The other thing that I mentioned just a moment ago is our baseline report, and this is what we are measuring against year over year. And you can see more of that on our website, and I'm going to pull out a couple of highlights. All you really need to know from this chart, if you're sitting in the back, is on the far left side are PET bottles. So this chart represents all of the packaging within the PACT cohort for the US. So roughly 5.6 million tons as of 2020. And as you can see, PET bottles blow everything else out of the water. So it's almost 2 million tons of PET bottles. And we don't even have all of the major beverage companies. I'll just tell you that within our membership. The second bar in from the right are HDPE bottles, which albeit are sort of exponentially less than the PET bottles, still a lot of HDPE bottles in our mix. And then things kind of taper off from there. In positions 3 and 4, to give you a sense, because it's in obviously descending order in terms of tonnage, are polyethylene flexibles of different sizes. So we know we really need to work on bottles. And people like to think of, oh no, we've got it. PET bottles are the most recyclable thing out there. We still do a not so great job of recycling those in the US. The recycling rate for PET bottles is less than 30% across the US. So still a lot of work there. Another piece to pull out, and this is also in our baseline report. So this is showing, as you can see from the different colors along the bottles, bottom, the contribution to the packaging total is in that light green. The light blue chunks are the percentage that fit the system for recycling, which means we are designing them correctly. There's capabilities in place to collect and sort them. We have enough capacity and enough technology to do that. And then the dark blue chunks that you see on top are the percentage of those categories that do not fit the system for recycling today. And a lot of that tracks back to poor design. So, and we have set a really high bar using the Association of Plastic Recyclers preferred design guidance, because again, we're trying to push everyone to the top. But we know, in the short term, when you think about 2025, we don't have a lot of time left, and we still have a lot of work to do just on bottles. And so that is one area in which the US Plastics Pact is going to be spending a lot of time just in the next couple of years, is really doubling down on PET and HDPE bottles, because it's so critically important to get that piece right, or else we may as well kind of throw out the rest of it and walk away. It's just so important to get bottle recycling right, and so much of that still has to do with design. I mean, only recently, you all might have seen Coca-Cola made a big announcement about changing the color of their PET bottles for Sprite and some of the other things that they had in colored PET to clear. It seems like such a small change, but has the potential to make such a big difference. This is just a reminder again of our targets and sort of the big things that we're working toward. Happy to answer any questions. Just for a little transparency about the pact, it's all of our corporate entities that are making this happen financially, so they are paying in based on their US sales and enabling the other not-for-profit participants to come on board. Happy to answer any questions around our membership. And with that, thanks so much to TLMI for having me here today. Look forward to any kinds of questions. A shout out to our current label-related activators, both UPM Raffletac and Euresic Label, and would love to talk to anyone else about joining us, because we really do need all parts of the value chain sort of pulling in the right direction.
Questions for Emily? Tyler.
Hey Emily, how are labels addressed? How are labels addressed in Target 1?
Thanks, Tyler. Sure, so labels are addressed in Target 1. We know problematic label constructions are a big challenge for a number of different plastic packaging types. We are looking toward the Association of Plastic Recyclers design guidelines in terms of what optimal design looks like for plastic packaging labels. That is something that was identified as a key problematic element for a number of different plastic packaging types when we released our problematic and unnecessary materials list back in January. So it is something that is of focus. Does that help, Tyler? Are there other things?
Other questions? If you are a TLMI member, this presentation will be available on our members' website. Emily, I want to thank you so much for making time to come here to present with your busy schedule. Thank you. Let's have a hand for Emily.
Thanks.